Tonight, I will be speaking on Proverbs chapter 6, verse 6 through 11. It says, "Go to the ant, O sluggard, consider her ways and be wise, without having any chef, office, or ruler. She prepares her bread in summer and gathers her food in the harvest. How long will you lie there, O sluggard? When will you arise from your sleep? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come upon you like a robber, and want like an armed man." This proverb is about King Solomon warning his son about laziness and what will happen if you are lazy. In the 6th verse, it says, "Go to the ant, O sluggard, and consider her ways." The ant in this verse is used as a metaphor or a symbol for hard work and diligence. A sluggard is a person who is lazy or idle. This person is usually not very disciplined. King Solomon is telling us to learn the ways of diligence and discipline. In the 7th verse, it says, "Without having any chef, office, or ruler." This means that you should be self-motivated. Being self-motivated means to do the right thing without someone telling us to. Being self-motivated is doing your tasks or chores without someone telling you to. In the 8th verse, it says, "She prepares her bread in the summer and gathers food for the harvest." This is saying that she is taking time out of her current time and preparing for the future, when she will not be able to make the bread and gather the food for the harvest. She was diligent enough to get food for the winter so she can survive. In the spiritual way, we can apply this to us by preparing our hearts and mind for Jesus to come back to earth. He is saying that we need to get rid of our sins and forgive, and we can do that with baptism. The 9th verse says, "How long will you lie there, O sluggard? When will you arise from your sleep?" This passage is Solomon asking when we are going to get up and start being productive. When are we going to get up and start working on our tasks? In the 10th verse, King Solomon says, "A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest." King Solomon is saying that when you take that short nap or play video games, that time will add up on your tasks, and that will come upon you very quickly. The last verse in this proverb says, "And poverty will come upon you like a robber, and want like an armed man." King Solomon is saying that if we are slothful, we become poor, and it will sneak up on us very quickly and quickly. In conclusion, we can see from this proverb that we should be active and productive in our lives. This can also apply to us spiritually by getting our life right with Christ, because he could come back to the earth at any moment, and we don't know when that will be. Do not wait to get your life right. Do it while you have the time. Thank you for your kind attention. I will also be doing the reading tonight, and the passage is Exodus 23, chapter 20, verse 33. It says, "Behold, I send an angel before you to guard you on the way and bring to you to the place that I have prepared. Pay careful attention to him and obey his voice. Do not rebel against him, for he will not pardon your transgressions, for my name is in him. But if you carefully obey his voice and do all that I say, then I will be an enemy to your enemies and an adversary to your adversaries. When my angel goes before you and brings you to the Amorites and the Hittites and the Perizzites and the Canaanites, the Hivites and the Jebusites, and I blot them out, you shall say, not bow down to their gods, nor serve them, nor do you do, but you shall utterly overthrow them and break their pillars in pieces. You shall serve the Lord your God, and he will bless your bread and your water. And I will take the sickness away from among you. None shall miscarry or be barren in your land. I will fulfill the number of days. I will send my terror before you and will throw into confusion all the people against whom you shall come. And I will make your enemies turn their backs to you. And I will send hornets before you. You shall drive out the Hivites, the Canaanites, the Hittites from before you. I will not drive them out from before you in 1 year, lest the land become desolate and the wild beasts multiply against you. Little by little, I will drive them out from before you, until you have increased and possesses the land. And I will set your border from the Red Sea to the Sea of the Philistines, and from the wilderness to the Euphrates, for I will give you the inhabitants of the land into your hand. You shall drive them out before you. You shall make no covenant with them and their gods. They shall dwell in your land, lest they make you sin against me. For you serve their gods. It will surely be a snare to you. This is the word of the Lord.
Invitation song is 886. Silas, very, very, very good job as usual. I remember years ago when Silas was very young, infant actually, and Hannah and Dustin actually lived in Edmond at that time, and me and Lori occasionally would actually watch Silas, and it's just amazing to me over the years how he has really blossomed up into an outstanding, wonderful young man. We really, really appreciate you. This evening we're going to continue our studies in the Exodus series, and our text this evening. I'll get it here in a minute, guys. There we go. Okay, our text this evening is going to be Exodus 22, verses 1 through 14. We're going to continue right where Steve left off last week with the laws of the properties. Am I not hitting this right, Jonathan? Did it go? Okay, which button did you hit? Just turn it off. Okay. So you'll use that. Okay, thank you, sir. Like I say, we're going to continue with the laws of properties. Our main characters, naturally, is God and Moses. As Matt said in his lesson last Sunday, he basically expressed how that God at this time has ascended onto Mount Sinai. The children of Israel at this time are sitting at the foothills, at the base of Mount Sinai. And Moses naturally has gone up on the mountain where he's accepting the laws for the nation of Israel. As I began my study, began going through different commentaries and different thoughts and different readings, it was common that most people felt that the laws of Moses was a very harsh law. Many even went as far as to say that the God of the New Testament is a loving God, but the God of the Old Testament was a God of wrath. There's absolutely nothing further from the truth. We read in Hebrew 13:8 that Jesus Christ says he is the same yesterday, today, and forever. We know that Jesus says that I and my Father are as one. If you know me, you know the Father. I think it's important to realize that wrath is not an attribute or a personality trait of our Father, but rather it is a reaction of a holy Father in the face of sin, evil. No different than my reaction, no different than your reaction as a father. My goals this evening is to look at the laws, but to look through the laws, to see the loving heart of our Father, to see the protective nature of our Father, to see our Father who is trying to build a nation where his children can excel, where they can flourish, a nation full of love, joy, happiness, and peace. A Father who is trying to teach his children to be considerate of others. A Father who is trying to teach his children to think of others as more important than self. A Father who is trying to protect the innocent, but yet correct the guilty. The purpose of the law, we read in Romans 3:22 that therefore by the deeds of the law no flesh will be justified in his sight, but by the law is the knowledge of sin. From the very beginning, the law was never intended to save us, but rather it was intended to show us, reveal to us sin or the wrongdoings within our life. Toby Keith, in his last song, he said it like this. He said, how would you ever know how old that you are if you didn't know the day that you was born? No different than here. How would you know what's bad if you don't, how it's good if you don't know what's bad? We might say that the law, it draws a line in the sand. It sets the bar. It shows us what's good. It shows us what's bad. Most of us, as we read the laws, we read and we say, oh, I've never done that. Oh, but I did that once. I did that more than I should. I don't do that no more. It shows us what we've done right. It shows us what's bad. It shows us what's good. As we go forward, as we begin to deal with the laws themselves, we're dealing with the 8th commandment, which is thou shalt not steal. As we began, we see in verse 1, we say, if a man steals an ox or sheep, and he slaughters it or sells it, he shall restore 5 ox for an ox, 4 sheep for a sheep. Most of us probably remember the story of Zacchaeus in Luke chapter 19. Zacchaeus was the chief tax collector from Jericho. He was the man of short stature that actually wanted to see Jesus as he come into town. He wanted to know what all the hoopla was about, and he actually climbed the sycamore tree because he was of short stature and couldn't see. As Jesus come into town, naturally Jesus addressed Zacchaeus and says, Zacchaeus, come down, I will be staying with you today. As Zacchaeus spent more time with God during that time, he became convicted of his sins. And he told Jesus, he said that, I give half of all that I own to the poor, and if I defraud or do someone wrong, I repay 4 times. Where did he get that from? He got it from this law right here. How would we, in this day and time, would we respond if we had to repay 4 or 5 times for anything that we stole? I think you ought to think about that for a minute. If the average car, which is stolen many times a day throughout the United States, every day of the United States, if you had to repay 4 or 5 times, the average cost is $30,000 to $40,000. You're looking at repaying $160,000 to $200,000. If a person had to work hard enough to repay that, they would never do it again. Within our society, our penalties are based, just like them, on the value of the item that you stole. If it's a misdemeanor, something that's not very expensive, then naturally a misdemeanor is a maximum jail time of less than 1 year, while a felony, which I honestly don't know what the breaking point there as far as what's considered a misdemeanor or what's considered a felony, but while it's a felony, carries a minimum jail time of more than 1 year in a state penitentiary. But, I guess us not wanting to be inhumane people, naturally your room is going to come with cable TV, a gym membership, and a little yard time. So, as we go forward in verse 2, if the thief is found breaking in, and he is struck so that he dies, there shall be no guilt for his bloodshed. But if the sun is risen on him, there shall be guilt for his bloodshed. Now the law is differentiating between night and day. Naturally, back in those days, they didn't have street lamps. They didn't have indoor lighting. At best, they had, oil lamps. So at that point, you couldn't tell what was in an individual's hands, what his intentions was, or anything like that. So I think you would have to assume that he's not delivering flowers. And basically, if he was killed in the process, there would be no guilt. There would not be a murder charge. But on the other hand, if it was daylight, you can see what's in his hands. You can see what his intent is. And the fact remains is that if you make the wrong decision, then you would be held accountable for that situation. As we go forward, he says that, and we're still talking about the thief here, he should make full restitution. If he has nothing, then he shall be sold. He shall be sold for his theft. David covered this very well here a couple of weeks ago. He talked about slavery versus servantship, I guess you might say. And what he expressed is how that we view slavery today is nothing the way God, is not the way God views or represents slavery. Slavery for God would be more like a servantship, where you would serve somebody rather than actually be, bound to them. In this situation here, this is actually even a little bit different here. This actually falls under indentured. If a person is unable to pay back what he has stolen, the thief will be sold in an indentured, as an indentured laborer, with the money going to the victim. So basically what that amounts to is there would be possibly a third party who would actually come in and he would pay for your debt or whatever the case may be, and you would become an indentured servant. So if you look at the definition of an indentured servitude, is a form of labor where an individual is under contract to work without salary to pay an indenture or a loan within a certain time frame. Indentured servitude was very popular in the United States in the 1600s. So this was something that was used very regularly back then, and I'm certain they had a little bit more control of the society that they lived in. As we go forward in verse 4, if a thief is certainly found alive in his hand, whether it is an ox or a sheep, he shall restore double. So now the law is differentiating between if whatever you stole is alive and you still have it in your possession versus if you've stole it and you've killed it or sold it. Naturally, if you killed it or sold it, you would pay back 4 or 5 times. But if you still have it in your possession, then you would naturally just pay back double for that. If a man causes a field or a vineyard to be grazed and lets loose his animal, and it feeds in another man's field, he shall make restitution from the best of his own fields and the best of his own vineyards. Back then, unlike today, they didn't have borders. They didn't have fences. They didn't have a way to really hold their livestock or things in position. They pretty much marked everything with rocks. So a person would really have to watch his calf or his cow or ox, I guess you'd call it, and keep them within his area. If it gets out, it begins to graze on another man's field, it would almost be considered as if he was stealing his food at that time. And then naturally he would be asked to repay not just any, but from the best of his vineyards and the best of his fields. Verse 6, if a fire breaks out and catches in thorns, so that stacked grain, standing grain, or the field is consumed, he who kindled the fire shall surely make restitution. There's that word again, restitution. We see that a lot. Back then, it was very common for them to make bread in an open fire on a stone, something to that effect. It was very common in the dry, cold seasons for them to warm themselves by an outside fire. If it got away, then naturally they would have to make restitution or restore what, if it burnt another man's field, whatever it might be. I thought about this, a little bit, and I think about us today. And if we was truly held accountable for our actions, and I mean really held accountable for our actions, I wonder, like these people are. I mean, the bottom line is here, if she makes a mistake, the wind gets away, or he makes a mistake and burns somebody's fields down, even though it was an accident, she's still held accountable for that action. And I think about us today. I remember Steve yesterday, or last week, he made the comment about the truck drivers, how that they're carrying tons of weight and mass and driving excessively fast down the highway with really no regard to really human life or what they're doing there. I mean, one simple mistake and they wind up, running over somebody, but the fact remains is they've got insurance. They're really not held accountable. Nothing like this. And us for the same situation. Would we act different? Would we drive differently if we were truly held accountable for each action or each thing that we done? Verse 7, if a man delivers to his neighbor money or articles to keep, and it is stolen out of his house, if the thief is found, he shall pay double. If the thief is not found, then the master of the house shall be brought to the judgment to see whether he has put his hands on his neighbor's goods. For any kind of trespass, whether it's concerned an ox, a donkey, a sheep, clothing, or any kind of loose things which another claims to be his, the cause of both parties shall come before the judges, and whoever the judge condemns shall pay double to his neighbor. This is kind of reminds me of Solomon, when Solomon first took office or first became king. That's one of the things that he was very concerned with, is being able to discern right from wrong. And I remember the story where the two women, one of the women's child had passed, and Solomon had to discern, which child did this one, which woman did this child actually belong to, by telling him to cut the child in half. Then it determined on who it was. This is similar to the same thing. They go to the judge regardless of what the issue is, and the judges determine, which one is guilty and what should be done with it. As we go on in verse 10, if a man delivers to his neighbor a donkey, an ox, a sheep, or any animal to keep, and it dies, is hurt, or driven away, no one sees, always remember that, no one sees, then an oath of the Lord shall be between them both, that he has not put his hands on his neighbor's goods, and the owner of it shall accept that, and he shall not make it good. But in fact, if it is stolen, then he shall restore to the owner. I found this to be extremely, extremely interesting. Let me kind of lay a scenario out, kind of the way I view this as I see it. We all know Dale. Dale has a really nice, beautiful classic car, Nova. 63 Nova, I believe, 62, whatever it might be. Let's just say, for example, that Dale and Debbie decided to take a couple of weeks trip or whatever, and Dale just was not comfortable in leaving his car in the garage by itself. He comes to me and he asks me, he says, Terry, said, I would like for you to keep my car for me. Would you mind putting my car in your garage and watching it for me while I'm gone? Naturally, I would tell him, sure. When Dale returns, I go to Dale and I tell Dale, I'm sorry, but somebody has stolen your car. Maybe that's true. Maybe that's not true. Maybe I took Dale's car, put it in a remote location, so that when everything calms down, I sell Dale's car and I wind up making a big profit from it. In this scenario here, me and Dale would go to the judge, and I would say an oath, no different than what we do in a court of law. This is where we get the court of law today, where we lay our hand on the Bible, say, I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help me God. So me and Dale would go before the judges. I would say an oath that I swear I did not take Dale's car before Dale and before the judges, and that, in this situation, would be acceptable, and I would not be held accountable for Dale's car. The reason they did that back then is most people truly understand that it takes a true low-life rat to put his hand on the Bible and say an oath to God that I did not steal that car. And these people back then, they had just crossed the Red Sea. They had just seen the plagues of Egypt. They had no doubt. They knew there was a God. They knew there was a penalty to be served. We should know the same. Our society should know the same. But as embarrassed as I am, I have no doubt in my mind that it goes on every day within our society where many people put their hand on that Bible. They say that oath and they lie as if they were telling the truth. But that's the society we live in today, sadly. As we go forward in verse 13, if it is torn to pieces, now we're still talking about an animal or whatever the neighbor happens to be keeping. If it is torn to pieces by a beast, then he shall bring it as evidence, and he shall not make it good. So in the event that I'm keeping Jonathan's sheep and it gets tore up by a wolf, I have to go looking for it. I got to go looking for the pieces, and if I find the head, I take the head into the courtroom as evidence. And it's got a little mark, and then I won't be held good for it, accountable. And if a man borrows anything from his neighbor, and it becomes injured or dies, the owner of it, not being with it, he shall surely make it good. Young men, guys, this is a life lesson you got to remember. You borrow a lawnmower, you borrow your neighbor's goods in whatever way it is, it's your responsibility. The old line is, it was a piece of junk when I borrowed it. No, that ain't the way it flies. If it was good enough to borrow, it's good enough to be responsible for. So, what do we take away from this? Now that we went through each of this, and I think what we go home with is throughout these 14 verses, we have seen the term restoration or restore 6 times. The Hebrew word for restore is shalom. Shalom means to be whole or complete, but it's also used in the Bible as being total, fulfilled, perfect, and conveys a covenant of peace. Restitution or shalom also means to repay, make the other person whole again, whether it be financial or otherwise. There's another word that goes along with that's very closely related, is shalom. Shalom has a general meaning of completeness, fulfillment of, entering into a state of wholeness and unity, and restores relationships. What God is truly talking about here, and what God is truly doing here, and I think if we go back to the basics and we realize that our Father is trying to build a nation. He's trying to build a nation of love, peace, joy, and happiness. He's trying to help people understand that others are more important than self, to be considerate of others. He understands that when a person is wronged, it tears the very fabric of that relationship. And saying I'm sorry is not enough. In order to mend that fabric, restoration must take place. You must restore that relationship. Let me give you an example. Larry, for example, if I walked up to Larry and I told Larry, I said, Larry, my lawnmower is broken down. Do you mind if I borrow your lawnmower? Larry uses mowing his lawn on a regular basis with his. He knows it's running good. There's no doubt in my mind, him being the Christian man he is, he would say, absolutely, Terry, you use it however you need it. What I have is yours. If I was using Larry's lawnmower, I would be mowing that field, but I would be very careful because I didn't want to run that lawnmower and all of a sudden it just breaks down. Not my fault, simply because I was trying to be careful with it. It's not Larry's fault. If I take that mower back to Larry and I say, Larry, I'm sorry, Larry's going to say, no, don't worry about it. I got this. I'll fix it, because of the man that he is. But the truth is there is no way that Larry cannot have a different view of me if I don't fix that and make that right and make it whole. If I make it whole and take it back to him, then Larry has a total different view of me than if I bring it back to him like that. That's what this is all about. It is not about punishing. It's not about putting people in prison. It's about restoration. It's about unity. It's about pulling people together. God is concerned with his people. He's concerned with his people living a certain way to where they have, I guess you'd call it unity one with the other. So, the lesson is yours. I'm starting to babble on, so I'm going to stop right there. We never like to close without offering an invitation. If you have the desire for the prayers of the church in some way that we can help, we stand ready and waiting. If you would like to accept Jesus, become a part of his kingdom, become a part of this family of God, the water is ready and willing. We are always ready and willing. Won't you come forward while we stand and sing the song of invitation?